What's going on, y'all? My name is Caleb, and welcome back to the Cinephile Diaries. This is episode 17? 18. It's episode 18. Welcome back. This is going to be a much more bare bones episode of the show. I loved last week. I thought last week's episode turned out really well. Even though it was kind of hellish to record, I thought it turned out really, really well. But it was way too long, and the week before that was also really long. So I think what we need is a step back. We're gonna have a very short. I got through 3 movies, and we're gonna talk about Ted Lasso, and then we're gonna talk about 3 movies. I'm excited about it. Let's jump in. Okay, so if you've been watching the show for any period of time, specifically the last 8 weeks, you know that my favorite show of all time is Ted Lasso. I think it is just an incredibly special show. I was in a live stream with another YouTuber yesterday and asked him about it, and I thought he put it really nicely. He talked about how it's just a really, really special show about forgiveness. Season 1 is just something different than regular TV. It's something incredibly special. Season 2 is great. It's regular TV. It's a step down from Season 1, but it's great. And then I have enjoyed Season 3. I think it's been a little bit aimless and meandering, but I don't really care. I just love spending time with these characters. Up until, if you watched the show last week, you know I really, really did not enjoy last week's episode. I thought the way they handled the decisions that they made last week just didn't work. I thought that it was not, last week's episode felt very out of character for this show. So, going into this week, I was really worried, y'all. I was really, really worried. I was not sure what was going to happen. I wasn't sure if last week was just a bad day at the office, or if it was a foreshadowing of where the show was going. I am very happy to report that this week's episode was great. This week, they went from what I think is their worst episode in 3 seasons to not their best, but top 10 probably. I thought this episode was awesome. I really, really loved this episode, because this episode did a lot of things, but the big thing that I think this episode did is it started bringing certain storylines full circle. If they might be watching this right now, but I got my parents into Ted Lasso, so it has been on in the house for a while, and so I just saw Roy's you deserve somebody who makes you feel like you've been struck by fucking lightning. I just saw that scene. Sorry, Mom. But I just saw that scene. So, and then this episode brings that full circle, and Rebecca gets a moment like that with Roy. That you knew had been coming. They had been hinting that something like that was coming between those two characters, but you finally got it in this episode, and I thought that was amazing. This episode has several laugh out loud funny moments. I have not seen anybody talk about it, but when Colin, because the crux of this episode is it deals with the Colin and Isaac fallout, which I have to eat some crow on that, because I was not happy with the way it was handled last week. But, and I didn't mention this in my review, but last week there was definitely a chance that Isaac wasn't mad about Colin being gay. Isaac was mad about the fact that Colin didn't feel like he could tell him. And that's what it was. And I thought that was handled really well. But that's the crux of the episode. My favorite joke in the episode, I think, there's one other, but at one point, Colin is like, once I got out of me mum, I never looked back, which is so, which is so funny. I don't care. Yeah, I don't know. You had to be there. I feel like that's the thing with comedy. You had to be there. But yeah, I thought it had great Ted moments. This was the show. Like the thing about season 1 is it so actively avoided things that were of the moment. It was a timeless show about forgiveness and positivity and vulnerability. It was a timeless show about all of those things. And I still love season 2, but season 2 was less timeless, and season 3 is even less timeless. Where was I going with that? I never remember where I'm going with things. I always get on these tangents and then never remember where I was going with things. If this show is going to tell stories about things that are of the moment, this is how you do it. This episode was how you do it. You got a great TED speech. You got Roy finally coming full circle and kind of becoming more TED like. You got a great the stuff with Isaac this episode I thought was incredible. Like you guys listened last week, I was not happy with the way Isaac was acting last week at all, and I thought this episode was back on track. That's the thing with this episode specifically. It was back on track. I think baseline this show it's taken steps down since season 1, but I was definitely worried after last week that those steps were about to get a lot larger, especially going into what's supposed to be the final episode of the show, like the end of the show. I was definitely a little bit concerned about that, and they brought it home. They put it back on track. Just end on a high note. That's all I'm asking. Just end this show high, please. Dude. I know it's gonna be a little bit sad because Ted. I don't know how you ended this show without Ted leaving Richmond. Maybe they will, and maybe they'll do a season 4. Maybe. I mean, who knows? But I don't know how you end this show without Ted leaving Richmond. But they could. So yeah, I guess I'm so much more positive this week. I loved this episode. Great Ted moments. The heart was back. It was another episode of Ted Lasso. Unlike last week, which didn't feel like the same show, this was another episode of Ted Lasso. And that is like the highest compliment I can pay to an episode of TV. It was another episode of Ted Lasso. It's going to be a bad hair day, isn't it? Who knows? Anyway. Yeah, that's my take on Ted Lasso. Let's jump into some movies. Okay, so the first movie that I watched this week is actually a rewatch. I watched Guardians 3 again. I don't know. I felt like going to the theater, and there wasn't anything I was interested in this week. So I went and watched Guardians, and it was before the weekend anyway. So I went and saw Guardians again. Still awesome. Still incredible. The story of Rocket is one of my favorite stories now in superhero media. The story of the Guardians, like all of these movies, is one of my favorite stories in all of superhero media. I truly love this movie. I will say, in my review last week, I said I gave it 5 stars. I have dropped that to a 4.5. I think the first 20 minutes of this movie it's just a little bit jarring. I think I figured it out. The first two movies, like, you can argue all you want that Rocket has always been the core of these movies, the heart of these movies. And that, like, that's completely fair. But the point of view character, the main character basically has always been Peter, and in those first like 20 minutes, he's kind of a side character. Um, that's just me. That's just I I think God, I had it all planned out. I had the entire thing planned out. But I think you center it around him. You center the opening around him, and then start the flashbacks. And I think that makes the movie make a little bit more. I think that makes it a little bit less jarring, at least for me. But other than that, this movie is still incredible. This movie is still like I'm gonna talk in full spoilers. The first the opening where you see Rocket get taken by the High Evolutionary and then they do that incredible transition. That opening shot, not even shot, but like the shot the like there's a couple of versions of the Atom, like Michelangelo's Atom, where like the hand reaching out from God. There's a couple versions of that shot in this movie, but there's one where the High Evolutionary is reaching to pick up Rocket. Chills, just incredible. But then you get the first big flashback where he meets Lila, Teefs, and Floor, where he's bald and he has the surgical scars around his head. There's a lot of stuff in this movie that I think is going to bother a lot of people who love animals. None of it really bothered me except that and then Rocket's scream. Rocket's scream, I hear that thing in my nightmares. But Rocket's scream, I hear in my nightmares. But other than that, like other than that, there's nothing in this movie that majorly bothered me. Uh, but when he's bald and he has the surgical scars, and Rocket's first word is hurts. I want to scream. I want to scream now. See, there's just something about this movie. It doesn't feel like a Marvel movie. It feels bigger. It feels more personal in a lot of ways than a Marvel movie. I there's all this drama around the Martin Scorsese thing where Martin Scorsese was like, it's just not cinema. Um, it's just not cinema. I'll just speak for me personally. I kind of agree with Martin Scorsese. Like because specifically what he said was, that's not cinema to me. It's theme park rides. That's what Marvel movies are. That's what 95% of the MCU feels like. There's a couple, they're specifically the Guardians movies feel personal to someone. James Gunn wrote and directed these, and they feel personal to him. Um, I don't know that there's any other Marvel project that feels personal to a creator the way the Guardians movies feel personal to James Gunn. Um, and I think the first one, I talked about this last week. I think the first one feels the least personal. I think 2 feels more personal, and then I think this one feels the most personal, the most detached from the MCU. Um, and that's what I love about it. That's what puts it above. That's what makes it my favorite Marvel movie. Is it doesn't feel like it's a slave to a larger universe the way the first one kind of does. It doesn't feel like it's checking boxes for the sake of, you know, we have to do this because we have to check this box because we're a Marvel movie. It doesn't feel like that. I talked about it last week. There's uncomfortable things in this movie. Rocket's scream, Lila Teef's floor go now. Oh god, that entire scene is so perfectly executed and so heartbreaking. The scene where Lila Teefs and Floor die is so perfectly executed and so heartbreaking. And then you get the callback to it with the heaven scene, and they're in heaven, and that, like, the way Rocket's regret in that moment is so different from anything in any other Marvel movie. Rocket's, like, deep self-hatred in that moment is I've never seen anything like that in a Marvel movie. Yeah, I don't want to. I'm not an MCU hater. I like these movies, but I don't like. They're TV shows. They're not really movies. It's a TV show. The Guardians movies feel standalone. Like, obviously they feed in, but they feel personal and real and standalone. Um, yeah, also, the soundtrack is once again, I don't remember if I talked about this last week. The soundtrack is once again amazing. Since You've Been Gone by Rainbow, I was listening to that in the car yesterday. That's such a good song. Obviously, Dark Days Are Over is great. Creep by Radiohead is great. Just a really, really great movie. The first 20 or 30 minutes it's just jarring. It felt a little bit clunky because it's very not funny. Like, it's funny, but it's not humor. It's not comedic in the way that, like, the opening of Guardians 2 is with Baby Groot dancing, or the opening of Guardians 1 with Star-Lord dancing. The opening of this movie, Rocket is, like, walking around nowhere while Creep by Radiohead is playing, and he's singing along. This movie understands the psychology of the lyrics you choose to sing along to. I think about that way too damn much. This movie understands the psychology of the lyrics you choose to sing along to, which I loved. Yeah, I think this movie's incredible. I think this movie's amazing. I still love Adam Warlock. I still think the villain is great. Everyone's talking about his line where he's like, "There is no God! That's why I stepped in." Which is a hard line. Like, that's a cold line. That's a great line. But he has another one where he's like, but. Such a rancid word. I love that line as well. Chukwudi Iwuji, I believe that's how you pronounce it. I probably just butchered it. Does such a good job in this movie with that character. He's also great in Peacemaker. I feel like if you haven't seen Peacemaker, you should go watch Peacemaker, because Peacemaker's also awesome. Yeah, James Gunn is just a really, really fun filmmaker. And, like, we'll talk about it in the next section, but he's very important to my kind of growth as a cinephile. So, yeah. I love Guardians 3. It might be my favorite James Gunn movie. I think I've seen all 6, because he's made 6 movies. He's made Super, Slither, Super, Guardians 1, Guardians 2, Suicide Squad, Guardians 3. 6. I've seen all 6. I think Guardians 3 is my favorite. It's either Guardians 3, or Suicide Squad, maybe. I don't know. The top 3 are really close. Guardians 3, Suicide Squad, and Guardians 2 are all really neck and neck. And then from there, Guardians 1 is probably number 4. Slither's probably number 5, and then Super. Super's the only one I don't think is very good. But yeah, yeah, it's a great movie. If you haven't seen it yet, go watch Guardians 3. Guardians 3 is amazing. Yeah. Okay, so for this next one, I have to take you back. I gotta take you back to when I was like 9 years old. I was living in a new place. I think I had been there a couple years, but I was in a relatively unfamiliar place. And I was hanging out with some friends, and we were having a sleepover. And that night, we watched two movies. The first R-rated movies I had ever seen. We watched Slither by James Gunn and Freddy vs. Jason. I believe we watched Slither first. And that might be why I am the way that I am. Because I rewatched Slither this week, and I had forgotten how insane this movie is. Like, I had forgotten how crazy this movie is. Cause all I remembered was Michael Rooker. I didn't know it was Michael Rooker at the time, but all I remembered was Michael Rooker's tummy tentacles. That's all I remembered, and like the way they would the way they would attack people. That is all I remembered from Slither. I'm guessing I blotted out the rest of this movie because, oh my god, like, there is some gross stuff in this movie, dude. There is some grossness all up and down this movie. But it's really fun. Slither is the story of, how do you describe Slither? Basically, it's like this dude is like having a fight with his wife, and he goes into the woods with another woman. They don't do anything, which I thought was really interesting. And for some reason, I'm thinking about the themes of Slither. I'm thinking about the themes of this gross horror movie. But like, so they go into the woods, and he gets attacked by an alien parasite, and then starts like eating a bunch of meat and going insane. And that's like the first 30 minutes, and it's like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Something's wrong with my husband, And then it goes from like 0 to 60, and there's like a giant lady. There's like a giant. He basically kidnaps a lady and like puts a bunch of alien slugs in her, so she's the size of like a barn, literally. And then she explodes, and all the slugs crawl out and start like getting in people's mouths and infecting them. And then it becomes like a zombie movie. And then they go, and then like, but it all comes back around because they kidnap the lady, because like the alien slug is like half alien, half Michael Rooker's character. They kidnap the lady, and like Michael Rooker at this point is this like ugly, gross like blob, and he's like, "Woman, do your wifely duties," and I don't even know what the hell that means. At this point, I don't know what that means for this dude. But yeah, you got this big giant alien blob. And then they kill the alien blob, and it's great. This movie would be very scarring for a 12-year-old me, 8 or 9 years ago. This would be very scarring for me. I assume this is the answer to all of my problems. I should talk about this movie in therapy. But in terms of like actual logical like critique, Nathan Fillion, who is in every James Gunn movie. He's in Guardians 3, he's in Guardians 2, he's in Guardians 2 on like posters. He's not actually in Guardians 2. But he's in Guardians 1, playing different characters in all three. Nathan Fillion has to be one of the most likable men on the friggin' planet. For those of you who, like, if you haven't seen Firefly, go watch Firefly. Firefly, it's 14 episodes. They got canceled way too soon. But Firefly's really good. Also, they did a tie-in movie to Firefly called Serenity that's also really good. Where else have I seen Nathan Fillion? I don't know. But he's really good in he's really good in this movie. He's really likable because Nathan Fillion has a difficult job in this movie. Because Fillion is like the protagonist. He's basically the protagonist. But for the first 30 minutes of the movie, he's like a background character. He only takes over once Michael Rooker turns into a giant blob and isn't really on screen very much anymore. But like the first 30 minutes, he's just a side character who's like kind of in love with Michael Rooker's wife. Um, and yeah, so like a lesser actor would have a difficult job taking that small of a role and making you like him. But because it's Nathan Fillion, one of the most likable men on the planet Earth, you kind of instantly like this character. You kind of instantly care about this character. And I love that. He's easy to root for. Elizabeth Banks. This movie reminded me a lot of Cocaine Bear, honestly. It's weirder than Cocaine Bear. It's crazier than Cocaine Bear, but it reminded me a lot of Cocaine Bear, which makes sense because this movie stars Elizabeth Banks, and Elizabeth Banks directed Cocaine Bear. Yeah, I love Elizabeth Banks. I was a Hunger Games kid. I was into Hunger Games back in the day. Ballad of Songbirds and Snake was really good. But I was into Hunger Games as a kid, and Elizabeth Banks plays Effie. That was my introduction to her, and I've really liked her. I just like she's just a fun actress to watch. I like watching her work. Yeah, Michael Rooker is amazing. The mayor is so friggin' funny in this movie. Because he's the opening, literally the opening scene. I think the opening is like an asteroid crashes and the asteroid has the alien in it. Um, but the opening scene is just like this introduction to the town and the mayor. You don't realize he's the mayor, but he pulls up behind this car and the car won't move, and he's like, "Move your move your bleep bleep bleep," you know. I don't know why I bleep that, but it's fine. Move your bleep bleep bleep. And then he turns over to her mom and her kid, and he's like, and they're like, "Hey, mayor," and he's like, "Hey, y'all." The mayor in this movie is really funny because he's just dumb. Yeah, and then I think thematically this movie's kind of interesting. I think the idea I think just interestingly enough, Michael Rooker's character doesn't become evil. Like he's weird. He's definitely. I don't know if Michael Rooker is capable of playing someone who you believe as just a normal husband. I love Michael Rooker, but I don't know if he's capable of playing someone who isn't like a little bit creepy. um, but he very active right before the alien takes over. He very actively makes this choice not to cheat on his wife, which I thought was an interesting way of showing that like he's not evil. He's not he's not the greatest dude on earth because he wants his wife who's 25 years younger than him to be at his beck and call, but he very actively makes a choice to not like force her into that. Whereas once he becomes the alien and those baser urges or whatever take over, he becomes much more evil. I thought that was interesting, and then I thought it was interesting that they never definitively put the Nathan Fillion character and the Elizabeth Banks character together. They don't actually get together at the end. They're just he just saves her. Like you can assume they probably got together, but this character is also like the Elizabeth Banks character is also dealing with the fact that her husband just died and her husband turned into a giant alien slug and then died. Yeah, yeah. But I think Slither's great. It's the first R-rated movie I ever saw, so I have some nostalgia for it. Um, but I actually really enjoyed this movie, and I thought it was really fun. Yeah, that's my take on Slither. We got one more movie to talk about. Let's jump into that. Okay, so for the last movie that I watched this week, it's one that I talked about it a lot. Like, I never saw it, but I talked about it a lot earlier this year because it was in theaters and everyone said it was really good. And I just missed it. Like, it didn't stay at my theater. I think it was only there for like 2 or 3 weeks, and that was just a really really busy time. I forget what else was coming out at that time, but I'm sure John Wick 4 was around then. There was just a bunch coming out right at that exact moment. I think that was when Scream came out. I think, but there was just a bunch coming out right then, so I missed it. But Air finally hit like I literally watched Argo because I thought I was gonna see it that week, and then didn't see it, and then didn't see it. And I thought Argo was pretty good. I thought Argo was good, not like it didn't blow my socks off. But Air, I went into Air. I don't want to say skeptical because I thought I was gonna like it. But like they're all the comparisons to Ford v Ferrari. For those of you who don't know, Ford v Ferrari was a film that came out, and I want to say 2018. That's about like the invention of the Shelby Mustang. And everybody likes that movie. I believe it was nominated for Best Picture, but I do not. I did not like Ford v Ferrari at all. That movie felt like it was on autopilot. Ford v Ferrari felt like, it felt like nobody cared. It was just it just felt like another based on a true story movie. I did not respond to that movie at all. And like maybe I need to rewatch it. Maybe I just missed something. But yeah, that movie didn't really work for me. So I was expecting Air to be better than that. I was expecting Air to be better than that. Air is freaking awesome. Air is amazing. I think the thing that like, there's two things that I think set this movie apart. The thing I want to talk about the most is the thing that like made it hit for me specifically is I spend a lot of time thinking about fame, thinking about the immortality of fame, and like the ways that famous people and people who make things, people who create things, they live forever because the thing that they made is always there. It's always findable. Their spirit lives on into the future through their art, through the things that they made or the things that they did. This movie understands that. There is a speech, like 2/3 of the way through this movie, that exemplifies that so well. And this movie's been out a while, so I guess I can talk full spoilers. They never show Michael Jordan. This movie's about the Nike getting the Michael Jordan sponsorship. They never show Michael Jordan. They show his parents, and like he's in scenes, and I think he even has like 2 or 3 lines, but they never show his face. Which I think plays into what I was just saying. There's a speech 2/3 of the way through this movie where Matt Damon's character is talking about the fact that everyone in this room is going to die and that will be it. Except Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan will live forever. And in this speech, they're cutting to like real world clips of Michael Jordan's life and ways that because this is when he hasn't even been in the NBA yet. This is when he's a rookie. This is all predicting stuff. And they cut through points in his career where he wins, he's the greatest basketball player of all time. They cut through that stuff. That speech is so inspiring to any creative, I think. To anybody who wants to make things. It's the path to immortality. Making something is the path to immortality. And I think this movie understands that. This movie really, really hammers that home. And that speech specifically, like, I was talking about why they don't show Michael. They don't show Michael because this movie's not about Michael Jordan. This movie's about the symbol. This movie is about the path to Michael Jordan becoming Michael Jordan, to becoming as important as he is. There's another speech earlier on that Michael Jordan's mother has about how we know that, like, she's talking to Matt Damon, you and I both know this kid's gonna win championships and be the greatest there ever was. We know that because we see him. So are you gonna bet on that? Or are you gonna bet on that? Are you gonna bet on this kid being immortal? Or are you gonna bet on this kid being immortal and change the game because of how much you believe in this kid? Or are you just gonna stay in the status quo? One of the other things in this movie is about, because when I was coming up, when I was learning about film, one of my idols, or the set of idols that I had, was the USC class of 60. I believe it's 68 or 69. That's Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, George Lucas, John Milius. I believe Caleb Deschanel was in there. He's a cinematographer. But they talk about, at like ILM and Lucasfilm, they talk about how going to work every day was just fun. Was just going to work every day was going to play with toys every day. And this movie kind of does the same thing with Nike, where, like, at this point Nike is $1 billion corporation. At this point in the movie, Nike is $1 billion corporation. But like, the CEO and everyone who was there when it started is still there. So they talk about how it took risks to get here. It took changing the game to get here. And now we're just being safe. We're just playing it safe. This movie, there's a lot in this movie about changing the game, shaking the status quo, taking risks. I saw The Last Dance. I know the story of Michael Jordan. I'm moderately familiar with what basketball is. But, like, I'm not, like, a sports movie fan. I'm not a sports fan. This movie's not about sports. This movie is about being creative. This movie is about the power of art and the power of creativity. Air is incredible. Air is amazing. Air is awesome, y'all. Air is, I did not go in expecting to love this movie. To love it. I thought I was going to like it. I thought it might, like, I'm at 27 movies on the year. I thought it might be top 10. I thought it might be 8 or 9. It's at number 3. This movie's incredible. This movie's amazing. The other thing to talk about with this movie is the dialogue. It's so good, and they find little ways to inject humor and have little jokes that make the movie endlessly entertaining and rewatchable. I haven't rewatched it yet, but I really want to, and I think I probably will at some point this week. This movie is such a masterclass in this type of filmmaking. Even halfway through, I was like, this movie's really good. It's a masterclass in what it's trying to do. And then you get to that speech, and then you get to the speech about who Michael Jordan is going to be, and the movie just clicked for me. And the movie becomes about fame and about immortality, and I just loved it. Air is amazing. Also, they find little ways to inject each character with, just so you know what is on the line. You know what these characters are risking. I love Jason Bateman. Jason Bateman doesn't get enough credit, but Jason Bateman is in this movie. And Jason Bateman has a scene where he talks about how he lost custody of his daughter in the divorce, and now he only sees her every Sunday, and because he only sees her every Sunday, they're growing apart and she's not used to him anymore. But because he gets to bring her because he works at Nike, he gets to bring her a free shoe every Sunday. So that is a reminder of who he is and who their relationship for her. And he has the scene where he's like, if we don't get this sponsorship and we all lose our jobs, I lose my daughter. But I'm willing to risk it because you believe in this so much, and I believe in you, and I believe in this. it's so good. Like, it's so perfect. It's such a great movie. Like, it's such a good movie. I cannot believe how much I love this movie. Genuinely, Argo didn't knock my socks off. Air did knock my socks off. This movie blew my mind. In just like, how did you make me care about shoes? How did you make me care about shoes? But they did, and it's awesome. And the comedy's great, but it has the heart and the emotion and the inspiration. Yeah, Air's awesome. Air is great. That's my take on Air. You should absolutely, if you haven't seen Air yet, go watch it. I know it doesn't look like a movie that everyone's gonna love. It doesn't look like a blockbuster. It doesn't look like a Marvel movie. But it's so entertaining and so it's both entertaining and substantive. And I think that's awesome. Go watch Air. And there you have it. A short, sweet, and easy episode of the Cinephile Diaries. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed listening to this shorter episode. Hope you guys enjoyed hearing me rant about Air. I was not expecting to love that movie as much as I did. Guardians 3 is also great. Slither's also really good. Actually, I think Guardians 3 is slightly better than Air. It's my number 2 of the year so far. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Cinephile Diaries. We will see y'all next week. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and follow on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Do all the great podcast things. Also, I need a catchphrase, apparently. Apparently, I have gotten some advice that I need a catchphrase. So comment below what you think my catchphrase should be. Also, I have been thinking a lot lately about what I want to do with the show. About what I want to do from here. I don't know that I want to fully commit to just YouTube, because doing a video a week is just doing 6 videos a week or whatever is not, I don't know if that's in the cards for me. But I definitely feel like I could be doing more. I'm really enjoying doing the YouTube Shorts thing, and the response has been really nice. But I'm not sure what I want to do with the rest of the channel. I know what the next couple non-Cinephile Diaries videos are gonna be, but they're not. But I can't do them till June. So I don't know. I'm just food for thought. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. If you have thoughts or comments or ideas, feel free to comment below and let me know. And we will see y'all in the next one. Catchphrase.